Honorable members, I now invite the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Housing and Water, the Honorable Susan Rodrigues, to make her contribution. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I sat in this National Assembly over the last 4 days, and I watched as opposition member after opposition member approach the podium and deliver a theatrical performance as though we are being scored on the delivery as opposed to the content of our presentation. I believe the honorable member confused for a moment where he was. I think he thought he was in the ring, but he's in the National Assembly. And we were treated a few moments ago to a very vulgar presentation. And because
Honorable member, you can't impute on the minister. Please withdraw that.
I withdraw, Mr. Speaker. A comical presentation would be comical if it wasn't so serious, because it was laden with false information. Mr. Speaker, everybody in this country knows that oil was discovered in May of 2015 under the People's Progressive Party civic government. Mr. Speaker, in 1999, under the exploration license that was signed by the then President Janet Jagan, exploration license, not an agreement. When that license was signed, we had no proven reserves. Exploration was risky business. Risky business, Mr. Speaker. But in 2016, after oil was discovered in 2015, and as a matter of fact, they said it was a gimmick. They said it was an election gimmick. That's what they said when oil was discovered and the announcement was made in 2015. Nevertheless, in 2016, when they went to renegotiate the contract to sign the production sharing agreement, for the 1% extra that he boasts and brags about at this podium, for the 1% extra, we had 3 billion proven barrels of oil reserves. It was not risky business then. It was proven reserves. And they got a 1% increase, Mr. Speaker. So it was total rubbish what we were just exposed to from the honorable member. And then, Mr. Speaker, how can we forget when they renegotiated this contract and renegotiated 1% for the Guyanese people, they also renegotiated $18 million in a signing bonus for which they hid from the Guyanese public for over 1 year and lied about it. They said it was a gift.
Again, you know, don't follow some of your colleagues. Lies on parliamentary. Please. You already imputed.
They concealed the truth from the Guyanese people about the 18 million signing bonus, and then in fact said they thought it was a gift. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Duncan spoke about constitutionality. Imagine the APNU AFC speaking about constitutionality when the Guyanese people saw constitutional violation after constitutional violation for the entire term of the APNU AFC term in government. From the appointment of the GCOM chairman to the elections petition, one after the other. In fact, the CCJ ruled that the president violated the Constitution, the then president, David Arthur Granger. First time ever in the history of our country. So, Mr. Speaker, and there are, I can't waste this time that I have here, because if I go one point after the other that the Honorable Sherrod Duncan made there, I will use up my 30 minutes or 35 minutes of this presentation. So we'll split up the response to the Honorable Duncan, because I believe we have a duty to the people who are watching us. They want to know, how does this budget impact my life? What is in this budget for me? That's what the people expect to hear from us when they tune in to these debates. And I want to spend a little bit of time on infrastructure. It is convenient to say that infrastructure will benefit the private sector or benefit contractors. It's convenient to say that because there's no other criticism. And we were in here for 4 days now already. Not a single constructive criticism of our infrastructure program. Not a single constructive criticism. None of these investments, Mr. Speaker, are consumption-based. All of this, majority of the investments we are making is on capital expenditure, building infrastructure for the future, sustainable infrastructure. All of our spending is on things that add value to people's lives. And the Honorable Kemraj Ramjatan in his presentation, while he attempted to critique the infrastructure budget, I believe he went too far. He went too far because they used this argument before, Mr. Speaker. This is a recycled argument about slush funds and corruption and so on from 2015. It was even in their manifesto in 2015 about reaping the democratic dividends, when they said that there was 28 to 35% procurement fraud and that they'll be able to save this money. So it's a recycled argument because they went into government and they didn't find any of this corruption that they said existed. As a matter of fact, they have members on their side who are now before the court charged with fraud when they were in office. So they never found this democratic dividend. So it's a recycled argument, and they've reworked the argument now and say that this is going to result in a caste system. But Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the facts. Now the fact is, take housing, for example, our infrastructure spending. In 2019, the CHPA said they will deliver 5,000 house lots per year. And the CEO then, Mr. Leland Saul, was giving an interview, and he said, I want you to, quote, I want you to understand it costs approximately $3 million to develop a house lot. And he's right, Mr. Speaker. He's right. He was right in 2019. Now, in the year 2024, in our budget, The cost for infrastructure, for first phase infrastructure, is estimated at $2.5 million per house lot, and an additional $1 million when we do the upgrade to the asphalt, put in the pure line distribution network for water, electricity, and so on. So we're working with an estimate of $3.5 million per house lot. This is 5 years after the APNU AFC government said they were spending $3 million per house lot. Just $500,000 increase, $500,000. The point I'm making is that there's no slush fund lying around the place that can be used to facilitate corruption. It is patently false, and the Honorable Member Kemran Ramjatan knows that. It is false. We now have to struggle to find contractors to build houses in the housing sector because the cost is so low. Anybody who wants to construct a house now knows that if they have to construct that same home on their own, it will cost them more. It is costing less through the housing program because we are utilizing economies of scale. This is a lean budget, Mr. Speaker. It is a lean budget, and we are using it to add value to people's lives. It is convenient to say it's for corruption and all of that. That's very convenient, but it is not true. So, and Mr. Speaker, we have reports. We have the IMF who came here in September 2023, and they said the staff commend the authorities' progress in strengthening AML, CFT, governance, anti-corruption frameworks, and support further advances in their effective implementation. Mr. Speaker, the report said several pillars of the anti-corruption framework has been further strengthened, including the Integrity and Public Procurement Commission and the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board. Mr. Speaker, must we forget when for 3 years the coalition government members did not submit to the Integrity Commission? They disbanded the Integrity Commission, so we were never able to establish a baseline. We were never able to establish a baseline. Mr. Speaker, who was pulling blinders over the eyes of the public? Well, they walk around with blinders on now, Mr. Speaker. They walk around with blinders. Now, infrastructure is so much more than building roads and bridges. The opposition would want you to believe that that is the beginning and the end of the story. It's not so. There has been a lot of research conducted and peer-reviewed academic papers. By the way, we were treated to a lot of presentations today with opinions. Not today alone, the last 4 days of opinions. There's been a lot of research conducted and peer-reviewed academic papers written on the link between investment in infrastructure and economic growth. There are also studies done on bridging the global infrastructure gap and studies on how developed countries have harnessed infrastructure and technology to propel development and reduce poverty, while developing countries have been unable to achieve similar levels of development, and huge portions of their populations remain impoverished because of a lack of basic infrastructure. The evidence suggests that infrastructure is essential for a strong economy and has the potential to lift families out of poverty by reducing inequalities. One academic paper written by Cesar Calderon and Luis Cerven, 2 leading World Bank economists, conducted a study in Latin America over 100 countries and provided an empirical evaluation of the impact of infrastructure development on economic growth and income distribution. The empirical strategy involves the estimation of simple equations for GDP growth and conventional inequality measures, augmented to include infrastructure quantity and quality indicators, in addition to standard controls. The results are that, Mr. Speaker, 1, growth is positively affected by the stock of infrastructure assets, and 2, income inequality declines with higher infrastructure quantity and quality. These two results combined suggest that infrastructure development can be highly effective to combat poverty and income inequality. And that is what the people at home need to know. And then they understand, how does this translate to my life? So how so, you might ask? Well, by providing jobs. Many of my colleagues spoke at length about the impact that the infrastructure program will have on our economy. By ensuring people have access to safe drinking water, to food, building the farm-to-market roads, access to shelter or housing, quality health care, schools for education. These are basic human rights, Mr. Speaker. And we haven't gotten to other things like affordable electricity, internet connectivity, and so on. And then what must we do also with the pleas of the residents who come to our community meetings? Are we supposed to ignore the pleas of residents at community meetings for better roads? All my colleagues here are in the fields. Regardless of their portfolio, whenever they go to community meetings, the #1 complaint is the state of the roads. Must we not respond to those people? Must we not respond to the people of Region 3 who are punishing every day, spending hours in traffic, losing hours of productivity, time that could have been spent at work or with their families? Must we ignore them? Must we not build the bridge? Must we not build the Wismar-Mackenzie Bridge? My friend and colleague, the Honorable Figueroa, spoke. He made several good contributions and suggestions about Region 10. But my friend, many of the investments you spoke about depend heavily on physical infrastructure. Capital investment, private capital investment would not come to Region 10 if people have to wait to cross a one-lane bridge. So all of these investments depend on the implementation of basic infrastructure. And Mr. Speaker, we will not be shamed. They came here to attempt to shame us into not spending this money on infrastructure. We will not be shamed into not investing in our people. We will show how this investment will benefit people and will improve the quality of life in the long term. In the long term. Let me turn to housing for a bit. Mr. Speaker, we get a lot of criticism in the housing sector. And we get a lot of undue criticism sometimes because we are a fruit-bearing tree. The Ministry of Housing is a fruit-bearing tree. That's why we get criticism. You ever see anybody throwing sticks at a tree with no fruit? They throw sticks at a fruit-bearing tree. And they're envious of the work in the housing sector because they never understood the housing sector. They never understood, Mr. Speaker. They don't know how to do it. It's hard work. It takes hard work, and it takes a carefully crafted strategy to deliver affordable housing to every sector or every segment of our population across our 10 administrative regions. So to avoid criticism, they say nothing, do nothing, be nothing. We are not a do-nothing government, Mr. Speaker. The housing program under this PPPC government is the most successful ever in the history of our country. It is unparalleled anywhere in the world and certainly cannot be compared to the mediocrity offered by the APNU, AFC while they're in government. The housing sector, the progress of the housing sector is visible for all to see. It is visible. You can see it. You can feel it. You can touch it. You can measure it. Just go on social media, hundreds of people receiving their house lots over the last few weeks. Happy faces of smiling people who are receiving their house lots, who are receiving an asset for the very first time in their lives. How can we forget the 5 years of neglect in the housing sector under the APNU AFC coalition? Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC allocated 7,534 house lots from June 2015 to August 2020, 7,534. And as a matter of fact, it declined. If you look at the pattern, in 2016, they delivered 2,020. In 2017, 1,131. In 2018, 934. It was going down. If they didn't lose the no confidence motion, I don't know what would have happened the next year in 2019, because they also made no capital investment for 3 years. No capital investment in the budget for infrastructure development in the housing scheme. And they wonder why they're sitting over there. And they wonder why. This is why, Mr. Speaker, the only thing they offer the Guyanese people in the 5 years they were there is a jubilee discount of 50% on the last 50% of their cost for the house lot. You don't need to give a discount on something that is already 90% subsidized. Is that a strategy? Is that a plan? That is not a plan. That's not a strategy. Mr. Speaker, 30,355 Guyanese are now landowners and homeowners. 13,834 women are empowered with ownership and can chart a course for their own lives. 16,094 young people are asset owners and now have their entire lives to build up their net worth. They said we were talking in percentages, so I'm not talking in percentages. I'm giving you real figures. I'm giving you numbers. 28,016 people received low, moderate, and middle income house lots. 28,000 low, moderate, and middle income families received their house lots. In 3 years, Mr. Speaker, in 3 years. Mr. Speaker, as part of our program, we have to spend money to acquire new lands for housing. We have acquired 51 new areas for the Central Housing and Planning Authority for the period August 2020 to 2023 for new housing development. And Mr. Speaker, for this year, 2024, 10,000 house lots will be delivered to Guyanese of every income category. Mr. Speaker, another common criticism made in this House is that we're using oil money. We're using oil money. Mr. Speaker, that's not the point, Honorable Duncan. Wait for it. So they use that to justify the expenditure. But Mr. Speaker, let me tell you what they did in 2017. In 2017, they budgeted $5.8 million for housing development. Not from the consolidated fund, from the housing fund. They earmarked $5.8 billion for housing development in 2016. The year is 2016. Mr. Speaker, out of that $5.8 billion, you know what they spent? They spent 12%. 12% of $5.8 billion. And the minister at the time had to come to the parliament when she was debating the 2017 budget and explain why she only spent 12% of the budget in 2016. And they want money to spend? Mr. Speaker, they don't know how to spend money. They don't know how to spend money, because if you don't have a vision, you can't spend the money. If you don't have a plan, you can't spend the money. So your argument about oil money is null and void. You have to have sense to spend money. And I questioned in this House already the qualification of the members on the opposite side of the House. Because if they're not qualified, how can you trust them to run an oil economy? They're clueless and incompetent. This is pure incompetence. 12% of your budget, and you want to spend oil money? We cannot allow that, Mr. Speaker. The people of this country deserve better than that, Mr. Speaker. We don't have any time to lose. The people need a government with a vision and with a plan, and with people who work hard, and with people who know how to implement a budget. And they have that with the People's Progressive Party Civic. Mr. Speaker, there are several other initiatives to support home ownership, because our focus has been on making home ownership affordable. We reversed VAT on locally produced building and construction materials. VAT was subsequently removed from sheetrock and concrete boards, and then subsequently cement was zero rated as of April 2022 to help with ensuring that home ownership becomes more affordable. To facilitate affordable financing for home ownership, we've collaborated with the commercial banks, and this has resulted in reduced interest rates at mortgage institutions. Taking into context a global context where interest rates are rising as a result of inflation, in Guyana, interest rates have reduced under this government. And this is credited to the government's housing program. The government raised the NBS mortgage ceiling to $20 million to give low-income and middle-income families access to more financing so they can build bigger homes, or homes that are of a better quality. They cut it in half when they were in government. That's the mortgage interest relief. The mortgage interest relief ceiling was cut in half when the APNU-AFC was in government. We raised it from $15 million to $30 million when we came back into government. We promote home ownership, particularly among youths and young professionals, through tax and other incentives, such as the mortgage interest relief. The housing construction program, where we didn't promise to build houses in our manifesto, but because we wanted to promote occupancy in our areas and promote home ownership, we've started the construction of low, moderate, and middle-income homes, including the young professional homes. We've offered the steel and cement subsidy program so that we can help people to get started with their foundation using the value of their land and the value of the steel and cement to cover their down payment at the banks. And in fact, the banks have been so responsive that NBS now does not even require a down payment. You're automatically qualified when you are given a piece of land to start building your home. Compliments of the policies of the People's Progressive Party Civic. We've promoted partnerships and incentivized private sector involvement in the sector, such as through the Building Expo. And Mr. Speaker, we have to talk about the impact of our housing program. So let's look at the growth in the construction sector. The Honorable Minister Dr. Ashni Kumar Singh reported to this House that there's been growth in the construction sector by 26.8%, and that mortgage and real estate loans increased to 22.5%. More than double the figure of 2022. In 2022, it was 9.8. It is now 22.5%. Mortgage and real estate loans. This is ordinary Guyanese we're talking about, Mr. Speaker. Ordinary Guyanese. Let's look at the housing portfolio at the commercial banks. NBS, I'll use three. NBS in 2020, the total mortgage portfolio was $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion. You know what it is today, Mr. Speaker? $19 billion. NBS alone. One institution. One. GBTI, July 2020, $6.2 billion. 2020 treated, Mr. Speaker, in 2023, the total housing loans at GBTI value $15.8 billion. At Demerara Bank in 2020, $9.7 billion. 9.7. July 2020, you know, I'm giving them the raw figures for when they were in government. July 2020, $9.7 billion. December 2023, $21 billion. You think people would invest in an economy that is not doing well? You think people will not acquire assets in an economy that they don't have confidence in? And this is ordinary people we're talking about, Honorable Kemraj Ramjatan. This is not contractors. This is ordinary mortgages, the values at the local banks.
Honorable Minister, you need an extension to conclude.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd love to give her the rest of the afternoon if that's fine with you. But I'll ask for the honorable member to conclude her presentation.
Thank you, Honorable. 5 minutes to conclude, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As usual, every debate, I run out of time. There's so much to talk about, Mr. Speaker. Let me go over to water very, very quickly. Mr. Speaker, access to potable water currently stands at 97.3% on the coastline. More than 35,000 residents nationwide received first-time access to potable water in the past 3 years. 35,000 residents. Mr. Speaker, we've ensured that water rates remain affordable. VAT was removed from water. You would recall that the APNU, they come here and they talk about their love for people and poor people. They raised water tariffs twice in 2018 and 2019, 100% increase in water tariffs. Plus they imposed a monthly fixed charge. They took away the pensioners' subsidy for water. We have restored the subsidy for the pensioners, and they claim to love the working class people. We've reduced tariffs by 5%, and we have been subsidizing the cost of fuel to ensure that rates remain stable. Mr. Speaker, we have expanded treated water. Our program is that we will increase coverage on the coastline from 52% to 90% by 2025, and that work has started already. 7 water treatment plants are under construction, 5 are at the tender process right now, and we will ensure that we increase our water coverage to 90%. But I want to move across quickly to the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, water supply increased in the hinterland from 46% in 2020 to 82% at the end of 2023. 82%. Through budget 2024, we will achieve 93%, and by the end of 2025, we will have 100% access in the hinterland. Mr. Speaker, let me give the per capita figures for water in the hinterland. Let me demonstrate their love and care for poor people. Mr. Speaker, in Region 1, under the APNU AFC administration, the per capita investment was $12,471 per person, per capita. You know how much it is now? $24,304 per person in Region 1. In Region 7, they love Region 7. The per capita investment was $6,140 during the APNU period. Today, Mr. Speaker, it is $59,691 we are investing per person in Region 7. Who loves Region 7? Who loves the people? In Region 9, it was $8,847 per person. We are investing, Mr. Speaker, in one person in Region 9, in water alone, $65,918. Mr. Speaker, a total of 75 new wells have been completed from 2020 to 2023, benefiting 30,000 people. In 2024, we propose to drill 40 new wells with 15,100 beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, they say that people cannot eat the roads, but they can certainly drink from the well. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to reference a remark by the opposition leader at a rally recently. He said, when we get political power, we will use that political power to serve our people. When he said this, Mr. Speaker, immediately preceding that comment, he said that he told his supporters that while the APNU AFC was in office between 2015 and 2020, many of the staff they inherited sabotaged them. And so when they get political power, they will use the power to serve our people, their people, PNC people. Sounds familiar? Sounds familiar? PNC people gonna get work? Sounds familiar? That is your nature. That is your nature. And the people have to recognize that this group of people will be a vengeful group of people. They will be vengeful. We cannot allow them. The people at home need to remember that we cannot allow them anywhere near the seat of government again, because they will rule with vengeance. They will rule with vengeance. They have demonstrated their incompetence and they are incapable of generating wealth for this country, Mr. Speaker. They're incapable of generating wealth and unfit to run an oil economy. Mr. Speaker, I fully commend Budget 2024 for passage in this honorable House.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. And now